Well, it is time now to check in on the latest when it comes to the grain markets. On Thursday morning, we had the chance to sit down with Jeff Peterson. He is the president of Heartland Farm Partners. Joining us here at the Nebraska AG Expo is Jeff Peterson, the president of Heartland Farm Partners. Jeff, great to have you on the show this week.
Oh, it's always fun to be on the show, and especially when we're sitting out here at the Nebraska AG Expo. It's been a great show.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's been a tale of two commodities, Jeff, as we look at corn and soybeans for the month of December thus far. Soybeans higher, corn lower. Let's start with the soybean complex. What is leading prices higher so far?
You know, if we go back, I want to talk about what kind of pulled us back a little bit. You know, when the RFS numbers came out and the RVO numbers came out, all of a sudden it kind of surprised the trade. And I don't know why it surprised the trade. They were looking for bigger numbers on the renewable diesel side, and all of a sudden bean oil started selling off, and that put a lot of pressure on beans, you know, get middle of last week. But we have found some support. And I think there's two areas we found support. I think the weather overall in South America is just getting a little bit drier and a little bit hotter, and that kind of describe Argentina. Now there's a few areas in Brazil also that is kind of the similar way. They're a little bit dry, maybe in parts of Mato Grosso, a little bit also in Paraná and also in the very southern part of Brazil. So as a result of that, I think everybody's saying, you know what, maybe we need to pay a little more attention to the South American weather. And then we have seen some really good strength come out of soybean meal. So that's helped the crush margins. But overall, though, crush margins are just really good.
Jeff, remind us in South America where they're at with their growing season here as we're in the month of December.
Well, you know, it's really all spread out. So let's start off first in Brazil. So here's what's going to be crazy, Bryce, is that here in probably about another week in parts of Mato Grosso, you're going to hear them talking about some of their first harvesting of soybeans. And so you got to figure, though, they'll harvest getting started here in December, but more of it will happen January, February, March. So in your very southern areas of Brazil, you're in a critical time frame in there in regard to filling those pods. Now you move on down to Argentina, they have a wide planting range in there, and honestly not everything's even planted yet there. So we've got a big range of what's going on agronomy-wise down there right now.
All right, let's switch. That was the soybean side of things. Corn has not found the support for the month of December, it seems like. Why is that?
Well, I've got a number of headwinds right there. If you think over and you look at crude oil came down yesterday, put down kind of a new low for the move, down mid-71s. You'd have to almost go back a year since we were that low. And since we're so tied between corn going to ethanol end up being blended in the fuel supply. So, you know, that's given us a really strong headwind. In addition to that, just the overall demand out there on the miles driven, you know, on the gasoline side, the implied gasoline demand would say we're down about 6 or 7% from a year ago. And we also have not seen exports come back around yet. Now, that's not surprising. Saw some big, you know, last in the summer, ended up having a big safrinha corn crop. As a result, they still got bushels. They're still cheaper than we are, but there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. It looks like as we get out into January, into February, we start getting more competitive, and at that point, we should start seeing our exports start to pick up some on that, Bryce.
So those are the storylines for corn and soybeans as we've established these first few days of December. Where do we go from here as we continue through the rest of the month? What's next, do you think?
Well, it's a really critical time. And the reason I say it's a critical time in there is in order to drive this market higher from here, we ultimately are going to have to see some drier conditions actually happening and continuing to happen coming out of South America. If we do not see that happen, and all of a sudden we'd start seeing range in Argentina, and Brazil would stay about as they are, then we're going to have to, and we'd pull these markets back from here because it's too early to trade the dry situation we have in the U.S. weather. I'm not saying that isn't going to matter at some time down the road because it is very important and areas are very dry, but it is going to take more time, and we probably got to get out into March, into April before that actually comes into play.
Well, it's always fun, as you mentioned, being here at the Nebraska AG Expo. A lot of people walking by, asking you your thoughts on where we're going, as you just shared with us. Talk about some of the other conversations, though. The producers asking you, what kind of questions are they asking you? What kind of conversations are you having?
Well, here's what we kind of find, and this is where I'm finding this run-up we've had in prices is a little bit different than it would have been, say, back in 10, 11, 12. 10, 11, 12, there was kind of almost a complacency of the market's not going to roll over, not too bad. What we generally see here is the underlying concern about when is this market going to roll over because actually the break-even prices are so high. And so a lot of people are concerned, even though they're concerned about what they're going to grow for a crop because it is so dry. Everybody is very concerned about what the profitability. And we hear a lot of people asking, Bryce, do I need to think about selling at some point, not just, the 22 remaining bushels, but also 23, and do I need to look at 24 and 25 also?
Well, on that, about a minute left here, Jeff, to get your thoughts on where we're going from here. What kind of advice you're giving to producers? How can they, or I guess what suggestions are you making to producers, if any, about locking in future years worth of crops?
Yeah, I would say on basically what we're going to need to do on this move in here, if we don't get a move higher in the next 2 to 3 weeks, then we're going to have to make some additional sales, or even if the move is very good, make some additional sales, work on cleaning up some of the old crop, working on getting stuff on the new crop. But what you want to do is you want to build into your marketing plan flexibility, because sometime down the road, if this would be a year, and we're due for a year where it's even hotter and drier than what we experienced, then you have to have the ability to still get a better price on those bushels that you physically have already sold. So build that flexibility into your plan.
Final word is yours. What else is happening you want to mention on this week's broadcast?
I would say right now, just think about your break-evens, where you're at. Do some careful planning upon when do you need to move bushels to make sure that you've got cash flow needs covered. Watch your basis levels very good. We've had a little bit of a pullback in basis, but I think we can get a little bit of a surge again as we get past the first of the year, and for sure as you get out into that April-May time frame. So start dusting off the dust on that marketing plan and get it all put together, guys.